Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to the Times newspaper set cover for examination in 2020. If you are sitting this exam after 2020, you're going to need to look at another video which I shall be uploading soon about the new set cover, but this is for examination in 2020 only. If newspapers come up as a question on the A-level media studies exam, it could be in either section A or section B. If it's in section B, it will be an industries or audiences based question, which I have a video for on my channel already, and it will be about the newspapers in general, i.e. the whole newspapers and their websites. But if it comes up in section A, it will be as a representation question using one of these set covers in comparison to an unseen newspaper, or as an unseen newspaper in a media language question. In this video, I'm simply going to look at representation using the Times set cover, but please do check out my other videos if you want more information about other questions that the Times or the Mirror could appear in. So the Times cover is a wraparound cover and it's quite simple. It's one large image. The fact that the image is so big and dominates the whole of the cover and goes round the back of the cover as well might show or suggest the importance of the people on the cover. If you're not sure who these are Donald Trump and on the left-hand side Mike Pence, who was Donald Trump's running mate. So they were kind of a pair or a duo when they were doing the election. And you need to be able to establish how they've been represented on this cover. The suit and the ties give them a sense of wealth, power and status. We often think of suits being associated with businessmen, so it might suggest they're quite successful. They're both wearing a badge or a pin on their lapels, which is in the shape and colour of the American flag, which also represents them as being quite patriotic and associates them with America. So people may have seen them as being very American, which was part of their key kind of selling point to voters in America at the time. This is added to by the background of the image on that wraparound cover, which is the American flag, and having that as the background with these two people in the foreground adds to their sense of Americanism and patriotism. Trump has his fist in the air and a facial expression that kind of seems quite determined, as though he's quite pleased with his success. The kind of fist pump in the air, it does represent him as being somebody who's quite successful, quite powerful and quite aggressive as well. Mike Pence is clapping in the background on the left. Clapping kind of suggests or represents him as being quite pleased with the outcome of this election. And the fact that he is clapping towards and looking at Donald Trump suggests that Donald Trump is a success and that people should be pleased that he has won this election. There is a quote on the back cover of this newspaper by Donald Trump himself, which says, "You will be so proud of your president. You will be so proud." The repetition enforces that message of pride in him and his job, and it's almost as though he's trying to convince the audience that they will be proud of him and that they will be happy with the way he performs as president. The headline on the front says "The New World." Now, those words could be seen as positive, but they could also be seen as negative or neutral. It's not entirely clear. Now, the Times itself kind of prides itself on being a more centralist newspaper and not necessarily taking sides politically. And whereas the images and some of the other words do reflect a slightly more positive representation of Trump and his win in the election, the headline itself, "The New World," and the subheading underneath it are a lot more neutral. The New World could be interpreted in many different ways, depending on the viewpoint of the audience. And the subheading says, "Donald Trump sends shockwaves around the globe." Now, shockwaves do make him seem powerful. You know, if something sends shockwaves around, it does suggest that that thing that has sent the shockwaves around is a very powerful and dominant force. It could be a force of good or evil. So the phrasing about shockwaves in a new world is a lot more neutral and polysemic, which means it's kind of open to interpretation by the audience. And an audience will interpret that representation of Trump depending on their own political standpoint. It's important to have a think about the reasons why Trump and Pence and politicians in general might have been represented this way on the Times set cover. We've already mentioned that the Times prides itself on having a slightly more centralist political standpoint in comparison to many other newspapers in the UK. However, the chief executive of News Corp, which is the publishing company behind the Times, is Rupert Murdoch. Now, Rupert Murdoch is quite a conservative billionaire, and he is reasonably good friends with Donald Trump and a supporter and donor for the Republican Party, which might explain how some of the imagery and some of the wording might be interpreted to be slightly more positive and biased in favour of Trump. Don't forget the target audience for the Times are reasonably white, British, conservative, middle to upper class men. And so representing Trump and Pence in this successful, business-like way and as being the right people for the job is perhaps going to appeal to the target audience of the Times, who are more likely to be conservative in their political standpoints. I would suggest making sure that you have looked at some other media products that perhaps have Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or politicians in general on them to see if you can compare and contrast the way they have been represented in this product and other unseen products.